I had this thing
Let's
for
go.
the longest time that I will be asking you this question,
Hmm.
but आज वो जो write-up that you shared, उसके बाद I felt like it's all the more important that I bring it up. So I want to
Yeah.
talk about reading and writing. And I know we
Okay.
discussed this in the context of how AI has, taken away our ability. But for those of us mortals who still want to read and write, this is very critical. So one is how to read, and I ask you this because I know you're a voracious reader. You would deny that. You would say that मैंने the time में कुछ नहीं पढ़ा है, but I think you're a voracious reader. You read a lot. When I read anything that you've written, I have to look up like five, six references because you've made so many of those. So I feel like how to read, how to cultivate a habit, how to be consistent, what sort of level of work should you read, and what are the kind of genres you should read. So you can start with how to read broadly.
तो यार मेरा ना बहुत सिंपल थॉट है. There was a time when I used to read a lot because English was new to me. When I say new to me, I learned English when I was 23, 24, like proper English, and I started reading, believe it or not, Chetan Bhagat. That was my first introduction to English reading, and a lot of people my generation, my age, also picked up from
Yeah.
Chetan Bhagat, to be honest. So all credits to him. In fact, I have credited him in a couple of interviews that happened when I wrote my first book. यार चेतन नहीं होता तो मैं नहीं होता शायद. तो anyways, coming back to track. तो एक तो वो, now obviously things have changed in the last 20 odd years or whatever. But one thing that happened with me is that now I read for joy. Now, joy is a unique thing to each individual. So I could be joyed about reading something on cricket. You could be joyed about something on, say, Bollywood. Somebody else could be joyed about uh, wildlife. So you need to find what is joy for you. Identify your joy, and then try to curate things from there on. So step one, what is your joy? Identify that. Step two, curate what you read. So now, when I was a kid, I would say that, once I start reading a book or an article, it's an act of disservice to end the book midway, and I want to finish the book, and I want to read cover to cover, read an article end to end. I don't want to just do it randomly. But as I grew, I realized that time is of short supply, and if I don't find something interesting, I will not. And I have a very bad example for that. Like, अगर आप खाना खा रहे हो और आपको दिख रहा है कि ये खाना खा के आपकी तबीयत खराब हो रही है, do you continue eating because you don't want to waste food? You will say, नहीं यार, मेरे को खाना नहीं खाना. This is not probably my palate. I will stop here. Same thing for reading. Once you choose कि आपको ये आपके लिए नहीं है, you can stop and say, चलो नहीं खाना. So that's one tenet. Second, when I talk about curation, what I've done is for each thing that gives me joy, I trust some people's opinion on that and some people's curation on that. So for culture, I trust a lady called Prakriti. Every time she shares something on culture, I will read that. I will ensure that I read that. For sports, I trust my friend Vivek. Every time he shares something on sports, I will read that. For random interestingness, every time Pradeep shares something, I will read that. And what I've also done is I have joined many WhatsApp groups and conversations wherein they send curated content. So like they will send, say, 20 links in a day. I know that at a random, in these में से 5 लिंक अगर पढ़ूंगा तो अच्छे ही होंगे. And those people are also people like me who are internet first, live on the internet, think about the internet, and do nothing else. So if they are internet first people, they are probably reading things that give them joy, which give me joy. So मेरे लिए वो semblance हो जाता है. So that's the other thing. The last thing that I will probably say is that in reading, my sense is that most pieces that I read nowadays tend to have one or two core points that they make. Like today, the article that I shared with you, Juhi, the core point that that article made was that I believe that being a jack of all trades is better for me compared to being a specialist. That's one single line article, and I've invested some 2,500 words to make the point, drive home. So here's the thing: if I'm able to suppress my intellectual sense, and I can say that एक line पढ़ के मैंने उसको depth मैंने देख लिया. That's where the value is. So, like for example, most people, like for example, let's talk of Malcolm Gladwell. He writes books wherein there is one concept and he has 30 examples to drive home that point. Look at a book called Outliers. He said outlier होते हो तो काम ठीक होता है, and then he's given examples after examples. Now it's my intellectual curiosity, it's my intellectual ego that says that I need 30 examples to drive home the point that reading about outliers will be beneficial to me, and I want to have 20 examples. But if I can keep my intellectual ego on the side and just take one statement at the face value, I think I'm okay to do that. So, like for example, if I tell you today, Juhi, I was okay. I give a different example. I was telling somebody that I think young people should build the muscle of focus. And here I am writing about how I cannot focus and I don't want to focus, and yet I'm recommending it to young people to focus karo. And instead of me giving 20 examples to them, I want to have them intellectual humility to say, सौरभ ने बोला तो कुछ सोच के बोला होगा 50 एग्जाम्पल होंगे let me take it at face value and let me think on it and then act. I don't intend them to act on my input immediately. I want them to think. But instead of me giving 20 examples, one line should be sufficing for them. So here's the thing. There could be a merit in outsourcing your reading to a larger group, a wisdom of the crowd, or some other people who will come back to you and say कि जूही बेटा ये पढ़ ले सारा पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं है तेरे को. So that is what happens to me now. In fact, there are a lot of articles that people send me that I don't want to read. So what I do is I send it to many WhatsApp groups and I tell my people, give me TLDR, and I give them a bait. If you give me your TLDR, I will give you my TLDR. And if 3 people give me TLDR, I will get to know अच्छा हिमांशु ने TLDR दिया है, चांदनी ने TLDR दिया है, आर्या ने TLDR दिया है. So I know Arya's personality. I know what she will summarize. And between the 3, I will be able to summarize the article very, very fast. So that is how I have built my writing, let's say, life structure or whatever you want to call it. So that's it. That's your answer. That's your cue to speak.
So when you say TLDR, that is when you are running short on time, you don't have the luxury of time. But if you were to have the luxury of time, and assuming there was a point when you did, because you read Count of the Monte
Count on the
Cristo,
Monte.
if I'm getting that right.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean, someone who has sat down with that book knows that you have to be very patient with reading. You have to be very invested mentally when you're reading a text like that. So the question is how to start reading these texts. If someone wants to build a habit of reading, right? You cannot just rely on
Yeah.
TLDR. When you're
Yeah.
starting, you have to sort of invest that kind of energy into reading. So how do you start with that?
Okay. Uh, uh, Counter Monte Cristo and Dumas is a bad example to start with. By the way, I read the unabridged version and I read it like 3 times cover to cover. So there was a time quote, I could quote lines from Counter Monte Cristo when I was younger. But anyways, that was a day in life. Anyhow, coming back. So here's the thing. The way you don't run a marathon on day 0, you prepare for it. Reading is like that. You cultivate the habit, you build the habit. What this means is that you start with joy. Let's say Bollywood gives you joy, cricket gives you joy. And often, Joy, you will find that these hobbies, reading will give you joy. It could be whatever, right? Travel could give you joy. Uh, Cooking, reading about cooking would give you joy. So you find those. And then you find a way to pick the best 20 articles. When I say article, anything up to 3,000 words about that topic and read that. You find short stories in that discipline and read that. You find content written by people in that space and read that. So you start building a habit of reading 3,000 words. Then you read 10,000 words, and then you read 10,000 words, and then so on and so forth. And also the complexity of the text is also going to go up. Like for example, lately I wanted to pick up Russian fiction. Uh, Dude, for my life, I can't read more than a page on that. And obviously, they're translated from Russian to English, and yet it is dense and complex, and I can't relate to the milieu in which that book is set or whatever. So it is tough for me to read, and I literally gave up, man. I bought a couple of books. I bought Fodor Doctor, whatever Dostoevsky, whatever that guy is, and Arya gifted me a book from that guy. I read 3 pages and I'm like, bhai nahi ho payega mujhse, and I quit it. And it's okay. It's humbling to know that a simple task of reading could also be out of your comprehension. So that's that. The other thing that I would probably recommend for any habit that you want to build in life is to build a schedule and a calendar around it. So if you put it on calendar, it will happen. So let's say you will say that every day from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. I'm going to read. Like the Starbucks I go to, this is a different Starbucks. There's a lady who comes every day at 8 a.m. and she reads dense books, man, at 9 in the morning. Like last time I saw her, which is 2 3 weeks ago, she was reading. She was reading, which is that book, yaar? The autobiography of the yogi. Have you heard about the book, Autobiography of a Yogi?
I've heard of it, but I've never
It
read
is
it. No.
it is dense as F, man. Matlab, and I've read that book, by the way. Yeah? I've read that book and it is very, very dense. And she comes to Starbucks every day, puts her music, gets her coffee, and she will read and not stop uh, 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 till I don't know how many pages target she has, but she's reading for like at least an hour. And that discipline probably would put her into that how to explain grind of reading. So like any habit that you want to pick, make a discipline, make a schedule, and then be honest with it. The other thing you can do is you can join book clubs, you can join book meetups, because there are tons of these. Like I know somebody who does silent book reading on Zoom. I don't understand how that happens, but 10 people log into Google Meet and Zoom, and they put their cameras on, their mics are mute, and they're reading. I'm like, what the f is that? But they do that.
No, that's actually a concept. That is a concept. There are study groups as well. They
Yeah,
exist
correct.
on Zoom. So I used to sit on some of these study groups. So you can just have that sort of, peer pressure of sorts that you have to study because now you're sitting in front of the camera. People
Yeah.
are watching you. You're forced to study.
We used to do Kaam
That,
Karlo sessions. We used to do Kaam Karlo sessions
yeah.
wherein everybody will log in and they will do their respective work, and that's how we used to jam. So yeah, that. Did I answer your question?
Um, Yeah. So now the question is, you said that there are certain texts which are obviously a lot heavier. Like if you're reading Chetan Bhagat versus if you're reading, say, perhaps Rushdie, right? Salman Rushdie, the difference is obviously visible to anyone who's trying to pick up the latter. Now the thing is, obviously, when you're trying to build a habit, you must also try on more difficult levels because it makes no sense if you're reading the same Chetan Bhagat level for like years in a row. You have to improvise, you have to go beyond your comfort zone as well. Otherwise, how would you grow realistically? So, what kind of genre would you suggest? Because, different genres treat, write differently. I mean, for instance, if you're picking up a book like Atomic Habits, it's an easy read from what I've seen, versus if you're picking up a book which is a lot harder, right? Perhaps a different genre. So,
So
how would you
I'll
recommend going about this?
I have an answer, and it's a very. I'll give you two genres for that. Genre one is crime fiction, and within crime
Okay.
fiction, you can pick Agatha Christie and Jeffrey Archer and Lee Child, and these books are written for easy reads. I mean, Lee Child is
Okay.
written in a way that you cannot put that down, and you will be able to finish a 300-page book in one night. So you can read crime fiction and you read popular crime fiction. Don't be again intellectually egoistic that you will go and read a very difficult crime fiction which requires you to think 20 times. Like if you were to read, say, this guy, what's his name? The one who writes for um, Parisian Christian things. Should I get the name? Okay, whatever. So
Um, yeah,
yeah,
Dan
whatever.
Brown.
So Dan Brown, it is a tough one. Yeah? Dan Brown is not a breezy read. It's a tough read because you have to make mental image of so many things happening in that world. Per se, you have to create the world in your head. So you read John Grisham, you read Agatha Christie, you read Lee Child, and you read such so and so forth. Like there was an author that I read. Her name was Sue Grafton. She wrote 26 books. A for something, B for something, C for something. The books were titled that. C for I don't know cat, D for dog, E for electrocution, and these are all crime fiction books and very, very breezy reads. So I've read a lot of those when I was growing up. So that's one. The second thing that you should read is for sure biographies of things that you're interested in. So if you're a sports fanatic, read sports biographies. If you are a food person, read Anthony Bourdain or whatever that person is called, the cook, right? Read his books. If you are into music, read Rahman's biography. If you are into, so you can identify a discipline and you can read biographies of other people in that discipline. And what that does is because you are keen on that discipline and because this person who's written the biography will probably be a anchor figure of that category, you're curious about it and you will read it. You will take one thing to another. And the third thing is you try to invest yourself into the story. So, for example, why I love Lee Child as a character is because 80% of his books are about Jack Reacher, and you're invested in Jack Reacher's life. कि यार वो आदमी यहाँ था फिर यहाँ गया फिर यहाँ गया फिर यहाँ गया. John Grisham, even though his characters don't repeat, but most characters are same. A lawyer, small town, facing difficulty, trying to do last things, etc. Blah blah blah. So you know that there is some predictability in the way it is being created. Same for Agatha Christie. You will see the entire mystery unravel at like one go, right? So identify such uh, uh, readers. I mean, for me, I think the answer is read popular crime fiction and read biographies.
Now, because reading is intrinsically linked to writing, when anyone is writing is advising how to get better at writing, the answer is read more, write more, right? What's
Yeah,
your suggestion on writing better? Because I know you also write a lot aside from reading. I think you mentioned that you write as one of your job descriptions when I read that piece. So how do you become better at writing as well? And how to
like
read in a way that you get better at writing. That is also a part of that.
yeah, two questions there. A question is how do you become better as a writer, and second question is I think you said how do you use your reading as a muscle to become better writer. Correct? Okay. How
Right.
do you become a writer?
Yes.
There is, in the words of one of my online gurus, Anjum Rajamani sir, he says the only way to get better at writing is to do riyaz. Riyaz is practice every day. हर रोज लिखो अपने आप बेटर हो जाओगे सो लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल द नंबर वन टीचर ऑफ राइटिंग ऑन द internet in popular culture is a lady called Julia, not Roberts. What is the name? Yeah, name yaar. Julia Cameron. Not Julia. Julia Cameron. She's got a book called The Artist's Way. You know, the
Hmm.
entire book. That entire book, it's a this thick a book. That entire book can be summarized into two lessons. Lesson one, write every day, write morning pages every day, wherein you write your stream of subconscious for 3 pages every day in the morning. And second, she says go on to artist dates, and these could be solo or group. When she says artist date, what she means is that आप जाओ कहीं पे बाहर जाओ and you go there as a curious observer of what's happening. Like I'm at a Starbucks and I'm seeing a, two people interact with each other. But this guy is, I'm in Punjab, so he's little brash and he's throwing his money at the barista, and the barista is also not getting offended about it. His friends are yelling from the other end. They are not bothered. I'm not bothered. So this tells me that next time I have to make a character in Punjab. This is a characteristic I can pick. Obviously, it's a cliche. I may not pick it eventually, but go there as an observer of conversation and then probably write. So there's only one way to become better writer. There's no second way, man. Is to write. More you write, better writer you are. By the way, I do not know if I'm a good writer or not, but okay. Do you want to guess number of words I've written in life?
I think you write on a daily basis or weekly basis. I know that much. You write.
Guess karo. Number of words I've written in life.
I don't know, maybe twice the size of a PhD thesis, I guess.
Okay, how many words do you think a popular crime fiction has?
Oh, I don't know the words, but I know pages. Like, for instance, I'm currently reading Bricklane by Monica Ali. It has a total of 500 pages.
So this
So
would be
I'm not sure.
about a lakh words. It will be okay. A typical book has 80,000 words.
Okay.
I have written 13 lakh words in my life.
Oh, wow.
So now imagine I am 43. 43 into 300 is okay. Let's say I started writing at the age of 20. So I've been writing for 23 years. Let's say 20 years. 20 years into 300 days for ease of math. So 6,000 days. So I've written 12 lakhs words in 6,000 days. So I've written on an average 200 words every day
Wow.
for my entire life. Uh, uh, most of these writing people would say that writing is not something that you are a slave to. You should make writing your, pardon my language, bitch. You need to be able to say, hey, writing, you're my muse. I call upon you now, and you better come to me, and I will use you, and I will write you. That I think that's the only advice, man. I can give you again. I can give you 15 arguments in favor of write better, write better, write better. But if I were to summarize all of it, I will say write more. This is one place
Okay.
wherein quantity will lead to quality.
Okay.
Okay, how do you make
Second
reading
question.
better? Yeah, how do you
Yeah.
make your reading into asking for writing? Simple answers to start to pick styles from those people. So, for example, in my case, a lot of my writing, again, I don't want to be okay. I'll say this: a lot of people have told me that my first book reads like a Agatha Christie murder. Now, ये बोलने में भी ना मेरे को शर्म आती है कि अगाथा क्रिस्टी कहाँ मैं कहाँ कैसे लिख सकते हैं. But I probably picked up the style unknowingly. Yeah. A. B. Now that I write, I try to write like Lee Child. I think यार Lee Child लिख रहा होगा ना तो कैसे लिखेगा? Short sentences, staccato words, etc. etc. So that creeps into my writing. Third, while you read, you start building a repertoire in your head. Like, for example, I could not tell you Dan Brown, but I could tell you that he's the guy who writes about Christian mysteries based in Paris and thick books. Now, for me, Dan Brown is equal to these three hashtags. As a writer, when I have to say, let's say, I will write about a piece wherein a young couple is on a date and they're talking about books, and now I will lean upon my repertoire of Dan Brown, Parisian mysteries, um, 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 like thick books, and I will probably spin a character and story from there. So in the world of stand-up comedy, they call it, I think, a scrapbook. I'm not sure what they call it, but what they say is that every time you go out, you should like every time you are out and about, you should have a piece of paper that you write your jokes on, and it's your scrapbook. 90% of those jokes may not see the light of the day, but your job is to keep gathering scrapbook jokes, and some of those will go out. Same for writing. You build a repertoire. Ernest Hemingway का quote है शायद. I could be wrong. Attribution could be wrong. He says, live drunk, write sober. And what he's trying to say is, when you're living drunk, you're actually building repertoire of experiences that you will be able to write when you write. So similarly, read drunk, write sober, if I may.
I think it was right drunk, edit sober.
Ulta है, correct. मतलब you're right. Actually, that's the right quote. Sorry, that is the right quote. Right in it. But I, in my head, remember. So here's the thing, right? In my head, the repertoire is saved as live drunk and write sober. That's saved in my head because I don't edit. So you get this. So बहुत famous quote मेरे दिमाग में एक तरीके से saved है. So that maybe you're right. I don't have factual data here.
Right. Okay.
So that.
But you're saying that when you're using reading as a muscle to improve on your writing, what you do is you look at these authors and follow their sort of style and imbibe that. But what
यार
about
ये ना
authenticity?
ये
There's a
मैंने
lot of
सॉरी ये मैंने जानबूझ के नहीं किया. इट हैज crept in, and now that has crept in, I don't want to undo it. Answering your question about authenticity, यार उसमें ना, think of it like that. I'm writing it myself. I'm writing it in staccato tone that Lee Child writes into. I'm writing into long sentences that, let's say, Frodor Dostoevsky will probably write into. I will use the rule of threes as they have talked about in Snyder's book, right? I will do all of that. But end of the day, the experiences, the content, the thoughts are mine. So I'm very okay with that. And yeah, man, I don't have thoughts, large thoughts in that. I'm not stealing their work. I'm not plagiarizing their stories. I am building my own worlds and my stories, and I am using that as a tool to write. So I don't think I have large uh, uh, challenges on that. So that's my answer.
right. Following up on that, how do you develop your own writing style? Everyone has a distinct way of writing as well. When you read a particular author, आज की date में when I read say Shashi Tharoor, I know this is how he writes. Even if I'm reading it without the name of the author, I know he has written it because that has his own distinct voice. When you're trying to, how do you find your own voice when you're trying to develop writing? Also, because when you're saying that when you're borrowing, you're not doing anything wrong, you're trying to develop something on your own. But the thing is, when you're trying to write authentically, for someone who wants to write authentically, sound like themselves and not like, say, Tharoor, not like, say, Rushdie, not like, say, Chetan Bhagat, how do you, how do they attempt something like that?
Um, यार देख उसका ना सिंपल आंसर है. मुझे नहीं पता. That's my answer. I don't know how to do that. I do not know how a Tharoor or a Monte Cristo's Dumas have been able to build a distinctive, uh, let's say, written tone of their word. I don't know the answer because I've not tried to build my own tone. I've simply said I'm going to write. This is what feels good to me. This is what I will do. In fact, here, sorry, I'll digress. But I hate my editors now. I hate them to a point that they make my writing so unlike me that I'm like, कि भाई तो मैंने लिखा ही नहीं है when I read what they've sent back to me. So I do not know how to build a style, but I can talk about how. I can talk about how I hate my writers. I can give you some other answer, by the way. I am a ghostwriter as well for a couple of big wigs, right? Now, usme, I know how to build their sites because what I do is I do multiple sessions with those people, the ones who are writing the books for. I read all the emails that they've written. I make them write thousands and thousands of words, and I interact with them. So I get to pick the words they use often, the mannerisms, the sentences, the way they address anybody. Like for example, Juhi, मैंने तेरे को एक बार गलती से बेटा बोल दिया, argument's sake. If I'm writing for, say, a big wig of automobile world, I don't think I'll use beta in that conversation. I will see how he reacts and operates in his universe. That. So yeah, that's my answer. I know it's not an answer that has made you any wiser, but my sense is that लिखो यार, ये ना I think oh, I have an answer. I think ये चीजें ना step 2 है bro. पहले तो लिख ले. मतलब first write a book, write the 1,000 word book, and then we'll see where it goes. Sorry, not 1,000 word. Write a 1 lakh word
Oh
book.
God.
Write a 1 lakh word book, and then we'll see where it goes.
Right.
I think that
Coming to
I'll see what I can respond. Bol.
those were my questions, I think.
I think is this it for the day?
Yeah, if you have some online audience, I can definitely ask
No,
their
I don't think
questions
I
as
have any
well.
audience. Oh, okay,
Okay.
cool. This was good, yeah. Thank you so much. Made me think, and I had fun. I think these will be useful to other people also. So we'll put them up. The
Bye.